Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Alan Pierce, most of y'all know me. I'm the restore coordinator for the county. This is an applicant briefing, essentially, for people, agencies, entities interested in applying for restore funds. There may be another one. The county commission, in consultation or in concert with the RAC committee, agreed that we'll have a window of application from May 15th, which is yesterday, to July 15th. The portal that Cameron's going to go through should be up and running, but we have right now until July 15th to submit applications. That's 60 days. We sort of talked about that at a RAC meeting. We thought that was adequate. I will say to the RAC members who are here, you're welcome to stay and learn and listen. This is not an official RAC meeting. This is for applicants, but if you want to stay, that's great. And it's really, I think, it's a question and answer period. I mean, there's not a format. Well, I say the RAC committee went through the application process, but since we have applicants here, it may be that, Cameron, you want to go through that sort of the protocol, how do you get in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And let me just say, so everybody knows, I talked this morning at the county commission meeting. When the RAC committee met, there wasn't much comment from the county about any project we're going to submit. We are going to put one project on the RAC, in this cycle, and that will be an Alligator Point Beach Renourishment project. We spoke about it this morning. We are looking for a $4 million restore funding matched by DEP's long-term beach erosion control, $4 million for a total of $8 million project on Alligator Point to save the Alligator Point Road from an area that is already washed out. So that's going to be the county. At this point, that's the county's project. I know Ted's here. The airport had talked about projects. I don't know if the airport's going to submit anything. This is open for anybody to submit, but the county will have one in there for beach shoreline protection.
Beach renourishment at the airport?
Well, no. The airport will do something.
Alan,
Yes, sir.
do us all a favor. There are a lot of people here that haven't been here before, and if you kind of sort out this pot one money that the county's got from the Triumph's money, from the FWIF money, and all that, so everybody knows, you know.
Okay.
Because somebody told me today that Franklin County had $60 million of BP funds. I said, well, right now, I said, well, that's not exactly right. So there's a lot of misinformation about this program and how it relates.
I think that's a great idea, Bill, because again, some of you all are new to this, so let me sort of give you a guideline. And then maybe the other thing we should do is introduce everybody so we know who, just for general purposes, who are interested applicants, whether just I'm curious. As far as money, there are multiple pots of money that the federal government has arranged for BP to put money into. There are sort of 3 pots of money that Franklin County Franklin County and every other county in the state of Florida, or any other county in the Panhandle, is eligible for. And I would get their numbers mixed up, but pot 1 is the money we're talking about today. Pot 1 is for Franklin County. It's $23 million dedicated reserved to Franklin County over a 15-year period. So the money isn't coming to Franklin County, it's going to the U.S. Treasury. And the U.S. Treasury holds it in trust for Franklin County as we submit projects that are, in Treasury's eyes, it's not our decision, but Treasury's eyes, are consistent with the Federal Restore Act. And that's a big problem because Treasury has very specific requirements and very specific guidelines on what they think are eligible activities. Eligible activities are generally environmental restoration, economic development, infrastructure. Those are the general categories, but there are things in there, and Cameron has more knowledge of the exclusions than I do. But we have to meet Treasury guidelines. It's not good enough for us all to agree that the most important project is X, because Treasury may say that's an eligible activity. So, I mean, unfortunately, even though we may all agree that's the best project, it still may be disqualified. So pot 1 is $23 million over 15 years. Treasury has told us, to give you an idea for scaling, for those of you who are looking at really big numbers, Treasury said, yes, you can put in a project for $23 million, but guess what? We're not going to authorize its funding until 15 years from now, because we are not going to authorize the project being funded until all the money is in the bank. We, the U.S. Treasury, are not underwriting any projects that any government wants to submit. The money has to be in the bank by BP before the money can be spent. And so those of you who are looking at big projects, that's a big challenge. I'll just tell you right now that if you want millions of dollars, be aware that those millions of dollars have to be in the bank in U.S. Treasury before the Treasury will put that project forward. So we are getting, there's about $4 million in it now. We're going to get $1.5 million a year every year. So in 2018, we'll have 5.5. 2019, we'll have 6 million. The county commission has said we're not going to allocate all 23 million right now because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what we're going to need 15 years from now or 10 years from now. So the board hasn't given a specific deadline or a cap on how much will be in this pot, but it's somewhere between the current $4 million we have and $6 or $7 million. So, you know, if we have a lot of good projects, the board of county commissioners with the ultimate authority on what's in our list of projects might say, yeah, $7 million, that's great. And so Treasury gets this list of projects and it says, yeah, these are all good, and we've ranked them. Well, they'll be funded, you know, as we get money through 2019. And then what happens is the county commission has indicated that rather than create a full laundry list of projects now in 2017 for funding that's not even available for 15 years, we will come back in 2019 or 2020, and we'll do this process again when, you know, a few years have elapsed, we'll have a better idea what the community needs are, community needs shift, you know, all that kind of stuff. So those of you who had come in here hoping to get, you know, a $20 million allocation, you're fighting a really tough battle because one, it will happen soon, and two, the board didn't want to allocate all that anyway because there's so many challenges in the future for us. So that's what's called Pot 1 money. There's a second pot of money called Pot 2, and that's money known as, Pot 1 is known as local money, or it's money dedicated to the impacted counties. The second pot of money goes to something called the Gulf Council. Everybody in this room is eligible to apply to the Gulf Council. The Gulf Council is all the 5 states who got impacted by the federal government, by the BP spill, as well as 11 federal agencies. And all those 16 players have to agree on projects being funded out of that council pot. Good luck. You got to get, basically got to get your governor to approve, to support a submission. I mean, you all, there's a website, a portal somewhere, I don't know where it is, but you know, everybody can apply, but you're going to have some, either a state supporting your project or a federal agency supporting your project. I mean, you're competing across, you know, a broad spectrum of powerful players. So, but that money's available, and projects are being allocated. Every state's going to get so much money out of the council money. To my knowledge, those projects are going to projects supported by state agencies, federal agencies. I mean, they're big name deals, but are we entitled to apply? We certainly are. So that's council money. The Pot 3 money is back to Franklin County. That's consortium money. Franklin County is a member of the consortium in the state of Florida of 23 counties. The governor of the state of Florida said, and while we hope the consortium will be the 8 counties in the Panhandle for which were impacted by the oil spill and for which get Pot 1 money, the governor said no, it's all counties on the Gulf of Mexico. So the 23 counties in the state of Florida and the Gulf of Mexico. So there's a consortium of 23 counties. Franklin County is one of those counties. We will get $11 million, or $13 million, maybe it's $13 million of consortium money also over 15 years. But that money has to be on a list, and I'm giving lots of acronyms, and I apologize. The consortium is going to put together what's called the state expenditure plan. The governor is going to approve that. The consortium projects are going to be, I think they have to, and Bill, I may be wrong, so I'll correct me if I am. I think the consortium projects also have to be sponsored by by your county commission, by your county government, because only the counties are members of the consortium. The cities are not members of the consortium. We haven't really looked at the county, we haven't talked at all at the restore meeting about consortium money because it's really money that right now is being argued about between the governor and state agencies, and each county's put in projects, but we haven't really focused on those locally. I will say that the county basically has made a split. Environmental restoration projects the county wants to see, that the county, Franklin County wants to see done, we're putting it on our consortium list. And that primary project is a $10 million Gulf oyster restoration project. We're putting it on that pile because we want the state of Florida to assist us in that. Since the state of Florida and the governor are going to put together the state expenditure plan, they have already given us, you know, nominal agreement that yes, an oyster rehab project is a suitable project and a high priority project on the state expenditure plan. So I hate to tell you all, we're sort of occupying a lot of that money already with our oyster recovery project. But we're doing it intentionally, ladies and gentlemen, so that the Pot 1 money, which we have more control over, and which you are eligible applicants, won't be competing with an oyster recovery project. So in a way, you may say, God dang, that's a big project. But it frees up the local money. And so Franklin County, I'm here to tell you all, we are not expecting or we're looking for oyster recovery projects in the Pot 1 money. That's money we want to see spread in the community for benefits that we're going to see locally and hopefully all participate in. So that's Pot 1, 2, 3. There's a Pot 4, which is a mystery to me. I don't know what it is. Go on the website and type in VP Pot 4, maybe you can find. I don't know what it is. There's a Pot 5. Pot 5 is money reserved for centers of excellence, which are broadly defined as universities and things of higher learning. And only universities and centers of excellence could apply for that money. And I don't even know the criteria for it because Franklin County is not a university, and so I haven't even looked at that. But it's a pot of money out there for centers of excellence to do specific things, educationally involved, I think, and research involved is primarily what the goal is. But that money is there, and I highly encourage those of you who are looking at from universities and higher education to go for that, because you're not going to get any competition from local governments here. We can't compete. It has to be centers of excellence, universities and centers of excellence. There are probably other things in the Restore umbrella that I forgot, but those are the main big 5 pots. Setting Restore aside for just a minute, there's one other main source of money that we are all eligible to go for, and that's Triumph money. Triumph money is money the state of Florida was awarded in its own economic battle with BP. The state of Florida, on behalf of all local governments, sued BP and said, we, the state of Florida, on behalf of all local governments, have suffered a great loss of economic economy, and it's reflected in the loss of tax revenue. So they went after the BP and won and I forget the number, $1 billion settlement from BP or a $3 billion settlement, but they won a great big settlement. And that Triumph money is reserved for economic development. And the first $300 million of that settlement has been paid by BP to the state of Florida. The legislature this session agreed, because there was a lot of debate, because when you give somebody $300 million, everybody wants a share of it. So getting $300 million allocated to the 8 counties in the Panhandle was a battle. But that is what has happened for this session. Now there's another 2 payments over the next 15 years of $300 million apiece. Whether those ever come to the Panhandle or not, I don't know. It's going to be beyond my life to deal with that. But the first $300 million is in the bank, it's in the Triumph Board's hands, and at some point in the near future, they'll be announcing the protocol and the application process for Triumph funds. Again, the Triumph Fund is I want to say, 90% economic development, might have some infrastructure. At this point, this is the dome for Triumph, and some of you all may have more access to this than we do. Triumph was designed as this is the words that the Senator Gates said to a meeting that I was at. Triumph funds are not supposed to be the first dollar or the only dollar in a project. So if you're going to apply for Triumph money, then you need to have matching money already, and you need to have some credibility lined up, especially if you're economic development. Don't go there thinking you're going to get $500,000 for a startup job, because they're not going to buy that. It's going to be difficult. But the Triumph money is money that the legislature that just closed yesterday or today, whenever they do the final budget, has, I think, 4% of that $300 million allocated as a minimum to each county. So Franklin County, $300 million, 4% is $12 million. So there's supposed to be $12 million of economic development money allocated to projects in Franklin County. And Franklin County right now doesn't have any projects in mind, and so as far as I'm concerned, anybody else has economic development ideas, you're ahead of us right now. We aren't sponsoring anything because we don't have anybody who we partner with. Again, Triumph is supposed to come in with somebody else's money, not be the first money, don't be the only money. So we don't have a partner right now. And the airport will be our primary target for economic development. If we had a client at the airport who wanted to use one of the hangars we out there and wanted to create some jobs and was willing to put up X number of dollars for some function, maybe infrastructure, but he's going to guarantee that if we run a major sewer line out there or get 3-phase power or some cost that he didn't want to bear, that he would create X number of jobs, well then we would go to Triumph and say, okay, we got this client who's got some money but not enough money, and we're going to ask for a match, and we're going to create these jobs. So That's the kind of thing that Triumph is really wanting to promote. Triumph is here to diversify the Panhandle's economy, so the next time, and I say this with some sarcasm, the next time we have an oil spill, we won't be all dependent on the seafood industry and the tourism industry, and we won't all be damaged equally. That's the point. That's the role of Triumph, is to diversify our local economies so that when there's another oil spill, which we hope there never is, that we'll have a more divergent economy and the impacts won't be as great. That's the case the state of Florida sold to get this big $1 billion settlement. That $300 million is there. I'm sure there's a website about Triumph. In fact, I believe sometime the Triumph board is intending to meet on a rotating basis. So since Franklin County is one of the Triumph members, at some point there'll be a Triumph board meeting in Franklin County. I don't know when, sometime. But I would encourage you all who are looking at economic development projects or even infrastructure projects that can be argued as economic development, go on the Triumph website and listen and learn about what they're doing. This year's legislation had, they did something that I'm not sure I'm going to say it right, is that the county commissions, while we can make a recommendation to Triumph, they are not bound by projects that we recommend. So there is an ability, not to just ignore the county commission, but don't feel that you have to have a recommendation from the county commission. That's one of the criteria that Triumph will look at. I'm finding a very bad sign for training.
Do you want me to tell them about NICWIP or NERDA?
You can go to NICWIP and NERDA. That's what I know about Triumph. There's a website out there. To my knowledge, there's not a timeline for applications, but it's certainly happening pretty quickly. So go to the Triumph websites and learn all about it.
All right, while he's getting some water, there's two other big pots that are tied to the spill. One is NERDA, which is a natural resource damage assessment. That's basically to offset damages to the environment and also recreational uses. A number of projects you may know about would be like boat ramp improvement projects. There's also oyster culch operations going on that are funded under NERDA. NIFWIF has a fund called the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund. That also has a number of projects as well, including recreational projects, land acquisition projects. It's called Island View Park. I believe that's a NIFWIF project. Where is that?
That's a NERDA project.
Yeah, that's a NERDA project. So anyways, those are two other funds that are out there. And to get your project in for consideration of those projects, you'll submit a project proposal through the Florida DEP's Deepwater Horizon project portal.
Right. So in fact, the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund has its portal open until July 14th for new submission. Now, there's already 14,000 projects in there. I mean, it's crazy. And we've got several in there. And years ago, I say years ago now, I'd say it's been that long. I put a project in there for $30 million of oyster rehabilitation in the Apalachicola Bay. So that's sitting in the portal, waiting for someone to say, oh yeah, we got $30 million here, let's do that one. But when you look at the list of projects, they're all over the map. There's $100 million projects and there's $10,000 projects. Anybody can submit to the Gulf Environmental Benefit. But as I said, it's mostly an environmental issue. So if you all are here for infrastructure, don't bother doing there. But if you want to do environmental stuff, it's open now. It's highly competitive, and the selection process is a complete mystery to me, but anybody can apply. Yes, ma'am.
Will there be an opportunity to have all the information that you provided in a very clear way, thank you so much, to have in hand so that we could really kind of...
I'm sure somebody has put all this together. I didn't make this up. I read it somewhere myself, but I just read it so many times I can recite it without looking at it. But there's a big flow chart that's very confusing to me, but I'm sure somewhere.
I'd say your best resource is Florida DEP's website.
It is.
Is it called Deepwater Horizon Florida?
There are different names, but you can get started there.
If you just Google Deepwater Horizon Florida.
Probably best to have a personal visit, and then you can get all the handouts. And I've been going to meetings for 3 years, and I've got handouts up
I mean, the challenge is, ladies and gentlemen, this was a disaster on a federal scale, and unfortunately, not prehistoric scale, but geologic scale or whatever the term is, spatial immensity for the Panhandle, and the federal government has got involved in response, and therefore the federal government is getting involved in rehabilitation. So there's billions of dollars there, but when you begin to look at the number of agencies involved, God, that money gets sucked up. And our dilemma locally, and you're going to experience this when we start hearing about y'all's project number, if anyone's going to do construction money, nowadays $1 million construction project is nothing in terms of construction. I mean, it's just frightening. So when we think $23 million, well, man, we're going to get a lot done. And then you think, well, I don't know, you don't know. So it's a challenge for us. Back to the restore, the Pot 1 money that we're really here about today, the county commission had given some guidance, I would say light guidance, is that they were hoping that applicants come in with matching money also. In fact, in our application process, we get extra points if there's matching money, but we didn't set up any criteria that you had to have it. It's just an incentive to get matching money. And I can't think of back on funding. I think those are the main pots there. But we're here to talk about restore. I'll be glad, not necessarily at the end of the meeting, because I may have talked too much, but if I'm in the office, you email, you got a question, I'll be glad to I try to be a resource for everybody. But I only know what I told you about Triumph, and I only know a little bit about the consortium. The consortium meetings are open to the public. In fact, the next consortium meeting is tomorrow in Panama City Beach or Santa Rosa or someplace. Santa Rosa. And Cheryl Sanders is the board representative over there. And they're working their way through what the governor wants on the state extension plan. Nobody seems to really know. The governor hasn't said, so everybody's saying, let's do it this way, let's do it that way, and let's see what happens. All right, I think that's really the I don't want to take too much time, a half hour, that's not bad.
Thank you.
Well, Cameron, you want to, really, this is a workshop, so I told you the county was going to put an application in, and that's all, that's what I'm here for, is to make sure that I follow the application process correctly also. But I think the best thing is just for you to go through it and be an open question and answer session is when you all reach the point, or is there any other general questions?
So you were saying that with the Pot 1 money, that there was not any environmental submission?
No, Pot 1 is Franklin County, our $23 million, and there are three main categories: environmental restoration, economic development, and infrastructure.
Right, so then, when you were saying that the county's gonna put in an application, you weren't talking about Pot 1?
I am, because we are going to do environmental restoration with beach renourishment. What we're not going to do is any oyster stuff in Pot 1. Did I say something wrong?
No, you didn't. No.
Okay.
I just needed to understand.
We are not hoping that there's any. I think I said environmental restoration, but any oyster restoration stuff. We really want that to be in that other pot, because that's really a state issue. We want the state to assist us. Yes, sir.
Reviewing that's $8 million that you're asking for the alligator point?
Yes, 4 out of restore and 4 out of DEP's long-term beach erosion control program, which is state funded.
Okay, and so in the next 2 years, since we're looking at our current pile of submissions that we're going to collect, we think there's basically about $6 or $8 million in that period of time.
Yes.
We could sort of get to.
Yes.
You're going to take 400, half of that,
Could be,
one
yes.
application if it works.
Yes.
And then we would be fighting.
Well, this will be scored. They'll be scored, but yes, I'm just saying. I'm being open and honest with you all. That the county's application would be a $4 million request to restore funds for the beach renourishment. That's our project, and I don't know whether you all. I don't mind telling you because I talked to the board about it this morning. Some of you all may not be wanted as open about what you're trying to accomplish, but one of the purposes of today's workshop, and I should say this, is that the applicants, the final applicants, are going to have to be somebody that the county commission and the U.S. Treasury have confidence in. So I know most of the phases here, I feel comfortable that you all are trying to get things done and are responsible, but the U.S. Treasury has told us in no uncertain terms that you better make sure your applicants know how to handle federal money, because if they don't handle it right, you, the county, are responsible for it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, and I probably have gone down this road before, but for instance, with our corporate extension program and the incubated, accelerated kind of work that we're doing, which is economic development.
Okay.
And we're already here in the county doing some things. So Part 1 then would be the process that we go through, and I suggest that when you start talking, we'll figure out or know exactly where that process is and what the application process would be.
Yes.
Yes, but
Yes.
I think your point was important because it helps us to understand 23 million over 15 years, as you said, and you said that they aren't going to necessarily, you don't know what amount they're gonna release each year.
Well, it's about $1.5 million a year,
$1.5
so.
million.
Yes.
So I think it's important to kind of understand what the landscape
Yes,
will be.
yes.
And essentially, that was the reason I asked you the question, but you really clarified it.
And then just to clarify more on that particular thing, you as the county in that project, the beach renourishment, are equally competing against
Yes,
us, or do
that's
you have
correct.
an advantage over us
Well-
when the county has to?
From a scoring standpoint, it's all equal. The final say is going to be held by the county commission.
Oh, okay, that answers the question.
Only the
So-
county commission will submit the projects.
So,
Right.
but
They're
you're
gonna have to
submitting for the
submit-
county, right?
Yes.
But they're gonna have to submit our projects as well, if we
We're
make.
going to score them all, the RAC committee will score them all, and the county, our project will be one being scored. I mean, we're submitting an application like everybody else.
Right.
But I'm not trying to mislead you, that we scored, and the ultimate voting, though, will be done by the county commission. They may agree with the scoring, they may not, I don't, who knows? But the county commission will be the one submitting the project, not the RAC committee, not the consultant, the county commission. So, but back to your, if you're submitting something with an education component, economic development, you have, pot 1 is a possibility, Triumph is a possibility, your pot 5, Centers of Excellence is a possibility. So you all need to be looking at options.
I know, I just, is there a way for there somehow to be a way of ensuring that there is some balance? Because if you are over it, but then you're also scoring it,
Well, now, the Restore Act Committee did develop the
Yeah,
restore.
the criteria
scoring
points are there,
criteria.
yeah.
We developed the scoring criteria, it's in some, I've got all these documents here, but it's here, I've got it right here. And they'll be, will you have this for them, or will it be available online?
It's online.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the scoring, here's part of it right here. With that, then each project will be scored, and from who, the projects that, the way I'm understanding it from sitting on the committee now, I've been involved with it since 13, the highest scoring criteria would be the ones that would go for submission. But the county may not want to submit, the way I'm understanding from you in the past, they may decide that the county commissioners just to submit one project, because it seems like the Treasury is accepting multi-year implementation plans that have one project or one or two projects.
That's a choice, not a guarantee, yes. The project could be a list of 1, it could be a list of 10.
But now, let me just say, that's highly unlikely in the counties that I've watched. Also, the Franklin County Committee, your committee, with the mayor, I'm sitting in for the mayor today, is going to make a recommendation to the county commission. And your recommendation, I assume, will be made on those scores.
Yes.
And then the county commission can evaluate those in terms of other things that they think is are county priorities. But I think the scoring plus the recommendation of the Franklin County Committee will have a large influence on the county's final determination.
But yes, but I don't want to miss, there's no getting around, this final project list is approved by the county commission. That's who the Treasury looks to. Treasury doesn't look to the city of Apalachicola for any recommendations, city of Carabel, it's the Franklin County County.
And in all cases in Northwest Florida, that's been good.
That's just the way it is. The Restore Act set up that the counties themselves are the applicants. Nobody, FAMU's not applicant, only the county commission.
right, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I think one of the things is that in this whole process, looking at the residents, the constituents, tourism is essentially important, and restoring things and bringing that in, but somehow, being that most of the residents, well, none of them are essentially here, that this would really impact. I'm just wondering how within this process you've addressed that to ensure that the residents, the local, indigenous, black, white, whatever color they are able to benefit in ways that impact their daily lives, that it keeps them here, that they are not having to work 2 and 3 jobs in tourism. So those are the concerns that, and the reason I asked the question and why I'm raising it. And I know that you cannot answer that, but I just want to put it on there.
And obviously, the application itself needs to support the signature making now, hopefully, and that'll. Any other questions I can answer? Or yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with the Centers of Excellence pot, and you might not be either, Alan, but I don't think you mentioned who will make those decisions, who is over that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think it's a website, Centers of
I was
Excellence.
just going to ask that, is there a website?
I think-
Google
yes.
Centers of
They
Excellence.
designated the centers of excellence back a while. Ours is down, mid-Florida near Sarasota.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think for Florida, it's called something like Florida Institute of Oceanography.
Every state has one designated, and that's been done several years ago.
So that's already determined.
Well, that's the only Center of Excellence? Is that one you?
Well, there is the Center of Excellence, and then there might be some other,
Okay, and I was part of it, I'm mistaken, but I was understanding that there's this pot of money, well, it is pot 5. I know
but
it's
I
pot
think
5.
I think what you're saying is correct, too.
I think you're both correct. I think the Center of Excellence in Florida is a consortium of multiple academic
Okay.
institutions. I could be wrong, but
Well,
that's my understanding.
they have funding available for research-based functions and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, Cameron, I'm going to, yes, ma'am.
All of the, throughout the panhandle, I'm just following up on Bill, all of the county commission, board of county commissioners then throughout all the counties, they are having the final say.
Yes, in every county, this is consistent in every county. And it's based upon the Restore Act itself, which lists the counties as the applicants in Florida, the parishes in Mississippi, and whatever other states there are. And I'll be honest with you, it specifically did not mention any city, so it's not like Franklin County got some leg up on you all. No cities are mentioned.
Everything is fine. I just said that to help clarify why our particular board of county commissioners are choosing.
Yes.
Everyone, all the counties.
All the counties treat the same, but I can tell you Treasurer didn't like that. Treasurer would have preferred to have all the money go to the state of Florida and let the state of Florida deal with all of us. So just
They've been faster.
it would have been a lot faster, but this is not what got created when you put too many people in a room together writing one bill. So, all right, Cameron, I'll let you turn it over to you then to go
Can I
through
ask
the.
a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So the selection criteria you were referring to, it's just not on the website.
Okay.
Is the selection criteria scorecard the document you were referring to?
I'll defer how it's labeled, I'll defer to Cameron.
So, you're saying select in terms of eligibility?
No, the selection criteria.
Scoring.
The scoring?
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's on the guidance document, which is on the website, and I've already opened it up, but here's that.
Does the website have a unique title?
The portal does, but the Franklin County Restore website does not. But it's got a link to the portal, which is where you do your application.
Okay, but this is this what is called the selection criteria scorecard on the website, or is there something else?
No, this is something I found
Scorecard may have been
from the Franklin.
It's still at the very last.
It's just the scoring criteria sheet.
This is in the actual application, and that might be easier. When you go through each of the items, it will tell you how many potential points you could get based off of your response and how the Restore Act Committee would score that. It might be actually easier for me to just, when you go through to the Franklin County Restore website, there's a link to this grants management portal. It basically brings you to this homepage. And so essentially, it went live yesterday. I didn't know if anybody has a chance to look at the website yet. But if not, I don't know what would be most helpful if it's, you don't want to continue this kind of Q&A session, or if you want me to show you how to actually enter in an application. Okay. So if you're considering a project, and I will go back to, there is a list that was defined by Treasury, and it's got a list of eligible entities. So you have to be an eligible entity, as Alan mentioned earlier, and you have to fit within this certain criteria. There are certain eligible activities. And they're to restore and protect natural resources, mitigate damage to fish, wildlife, and natural resources, implement federally approved conservation plans, workforce development and job creation, improve state parks located in coastal areas affected by the spill, infrastructure projects benefiting the local economy and natural resources, coastal flood protection, planning assistance, promotion of tourism, or promote the consumption of seafood for the Gulf region. So if you do not qualify under one of those activities, you are not eligible for direct component funding. And that's a Treasury requirement. Treasury said you've got to at least check one of these boxes. So when you come to the portal,
Let me do one thing, Cameron. So Cameron works with Dewberry, Jen works with Dewberry, and they are our consultants. They're available to you all. So I want to say this before I get too far. He's available. His contacts are going to be somewhere at some point. So you don't have to remember everything tonight. They're available to assist you in your application process.
So when you were to come to the homepage, you would first thing, and in the guidance document, there is a step-by-step process for how to do all of this. It's right on the guidance document says, how do I submit a project? And it takes you literally step-by-step through the entire thing. But so if you don't, the first thing would do be to create an account. So you'd hit register here. Everything, again, with the asterisk is required something, so you're putting, you're creating a username for your account, the applicant type, you have to identify what type of entity you are, first name, last name, point of contacts, phone numbers, emails, and then a password for creating an account. So that's first and foremost what is needed. I've already done that, so I'll kind of enter into the portal. So once you enter into the portal, it takes you, and it looks something like this. It defaults in and brings you to this My Projects page. And so all those here who are interested in submitting an application, you would hit this Add a Project. Before you can even go any further in the website, you have to enter a project title, and you have to enter in a location information. And the more specific you can be, the better. And it will populate a point on the map. So it's going to geocode the address. So there's our location. And you have to hit save location and your title. So that is a absolute first step before you can even begin to access the rest of the application. So then it sequentially would go through the tabs. So the actual project form, which is basically, this was derived from the, if you look at this downloads tab, this is in Word format. But this is what we reviewed at the last RAC meeting, which is essentially the project application form. So we have taken all of Treasury's requirements and come up with an application form, including it's essentially all of Treasury requirements for what's in an applicable project to receive direct component funds. So this was made into the website. Let's go back to my projects. you'll see it's already, from that initial step, already saved my first project, so I'll just go back to editing it. So in the project form, first and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, you have to have a qualifying primary eligible activity. So you have to fall under one of these criteria. So we click coastal flood protection and related infrastructure, and then any secondary activities. So if your project has other benefits associated with it that are eligible under, again, additional applicable criteria. So let's say, does infrastructure and improvements to a state park. This is important. Was the proposed activity included in any claim for compensation paid out by the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund after LA 6/2012? So if yes, you are not eligible. So hit no, and then you start going through the actual application. We've set word maximums, but that does not mean there is the opportunity to include attachments. So if you have something that trips that threshold, just make a note that, so see attachment A. And there's the opportunity on the third tab, the second tab over for attachments. So what we're looking for here is you go through your project description and need. So talk about, and clearly explain how the project meets the identified primary activity. Going through timing. So include, and these are all things that what we're asking for is stuff that Treasury is requiring in the actual application. So when we're preparing this multi-year implementation plan and we're saying, hey Treasury, this is the project that the county is submitting for funding, it has to check all these boxes. And so the more information you can provide in this, the easier it is. Because if not, I'm going to have to be hounding you saying, all right, what are the milestones for your project? What are the time frames? I'm going to need that information. So brief project schedules, specific tasks, milestones, related time frames, showing that the project can be implemented and quantifiable benefits realized within a reasonable, acceptable time frame. You didn't go into feasibility. It asked for a budget breakdown, and that's also an additional attachment. And we've got, if you go through the downloads site, there's a sample budget worksheet that we've already created for you, and it's based off of, again, the information that we need to submit to Treasury. And it's looking for these specific items, whatever the activity/item is, how much you're asking for from the counties for SCORE funding, so what Treasury would be giving for the direct component funds, if there's any cash match, any in-kind match, the total cost of the project, and the source of the match. So this would be something that there's a note on the actual application that this would be something that every application would download, would fill this out and include this as an attachment. So going back to the projects. So again, going through, we're now feasibility, budget, partnerships and leveraging, a short narrative describing how the project is supported by multiple partners. This would be something where you could attach some letters of support from other agencies or any other leveraging funds if you've got some type of secure cash funding source and you wanted to attach that to prove that you've got that. That would be something you could attach. A monitoring plan. So we need to know a comprehensive monitoring plan and success measurement plan for the proposed project. Sustainability and efficiency. So a narrative describing how the project approaches efficiency measures and provides long-term benefits, how it builds on existing assets, links outcomes, partners, or lands, and does not produce negative environmental impacts. I would emphasize if your project has a negative environmental impact, probably don't apply. And then the best available science. If one of your eligible activities is to protect or restore natural resources, this is something that Treasury has come out with recently. So you click yes if that's one of the eligible activities that you're saying your project falls under, and then it's asking for the best available science, meaning that you can cite a published article or some type of book or something that says that this is the best available science, and the project that you're promoting is utilizing these practices. Continuing on, possible material risk to implement and maintain the proposed activity. If there are any possible material risks, budgetary, legal, regulatory, ecological, and then any mitigation strategy to offset that risk. Permitting. Does the proposed activity require any federal, tribal, state, or local permits? Yes. My guess is most of these activities will require some type of permit. So we would need to know whether that's, an ERP, a JCP, any type of those permits that would be required with a project. Will land be improved? If you hit yes, it's asking you to go through these remaining questions. So will land or interest be acquired? What are the legal rights with the acquisition? Is there an easement? If so, what is the lifetime of the easement? Will the applicant hold a title to the land? What is the total acreage of the proposed property that you're looking to acquire? / if it's an easement or there's a fee title, has the applicant obtained a recent certified appraisal of the property? That's another thing that if you have, you request a copy of the appraisal. Has the applicant obtained a recent title opinion or certificate? Again, if you have that information, please attach it. Relocation assistance. Will the proposed project cause the displacement of any persons, businesses, or farm operations? And this goes through if yes, as required by Titles 2 and 3 of Uniform Relocation. You have to provide certain provisions that ensure safe, decent, sanitary placement dwelling will be available to such persons within a reasonable period of time prior to displacement. So then we get into the actual local selection criteria. And this is more the scorecard I think you're referencing. So this is what the Restore Act Committee, based off of your project and the narrative you provide, will be scoring. So if that initial box you checked was, or any of the boxes you checked, is for the restoration or protection of natural resources, we're asking that you go through for the first item is water quality. So provide a narrative explaining how the proposed project will improve water quality of the bay and or its tributaries. So the RAC committee decided that's worth 8.5 points. So within this whole restoration and protection of natural resources tab, we've got water quality, estuarine habitat, so narrative, how it improve, enhance, restore the structure and function of habitats, seagrasses, marsh. If your project is a workforce development and job creation project, asking for a narrative describing how the project will enhance the potential of the existing workforce development and or job creation assets within Franklin County. And again, each one of these breaks down the points, the maximum points allocated as decided upon by the RAC committee. Attract and expand new industries, workforce gaps. Next, if your project, if you check infrastructure benefiting the economy or ecological resources. So stormwater management, flood control, technology and or technology access, waterway navigation access. Again, coastal flood protection related infrastructure. So how your project would apply to disaster planning, response and recovery, flood protection and or mitigation, emergency services, then under the tab of tourism, recreational fishing, and seafood, how it might enhance and or market existing assets, tourism, oyster recovery and or improvement, public waterfront access, fisheries. And then we get into the bonus criteria, another 12 points maximum, so provide a short narrative explaining how the proposed project clearly demonstrates public benefit. And then the second is leveraging funds. So as you work through, also really important, you can save your work at any time. If you go to the bottom, hit save details. So we're understanding that we're asking for a lot of information here. So as you're working through your project application, I recommend, after every applicable tab you fill out, just go ahead and scroll to the bottom and hit save details. And so once you've gone through that process, again, we get to the attachments, and that's, at a minimum, we're asking for the financials, the budget breakdown, which we've provided in this downloads tab. And then once you go to status, it's simply a submit application. Yes, sir.
I got a couple of questions. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Obviously, for a project to be competitive, it's going to need to hit at least 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 5 of these different categories in order to get that evaluation up to a competitive rate. I think I'll speak for me and maybe many others here. We don't have a lot of staff and resources to do an application like this without some evaluation of whether we're going to be competitive. Your role as advisors to the county and to us, are you able to help us and guide us to take a look at our projects if we called you up and say, you've got something here, you should pursue this and see if this is, think maybe we might have something that gets us in the ballpark? Will you be able to advise us in that direction, or are we just going to have to just, not knowing what our competition is, go into this blind and perhaps waste our time doing something that ultimately is not going to make the grade?
Let's say I can't help you with your application, like actually say, all right, this is how your project benefits water quality. But I can tell you that we can sit down over the phone or email and talk about your project, and I can say, all right, it's definitely, first and foremost, it meets the eligibility requirements as defined by Treasury. So I mean, that's got to be first and foremost. If you don't meet one of those, then I'll tell you, don't waste your time. But yes, it's one of those, the more of those boxes you check, the higher, otherwise you're hitting not applicable, so your project isn't getting any of those allocated points.
So we need a fishery that hires lots of people, that's a tourism attraction. I mean, that's basically the kind of projects we're going to look at to be competitive in this process.
Well, no, as we talked about in the application process, I mean, because it's such a broad range of eligibility, I don't know any project will meet all of it. So as Bill had said earlier, there could easily be some low scores.
Okay.
Let me also say, this is a real sensitive area, and you guys, I would caution you not to get too heavily involved in being consultants for individual projects, but just provide the general information like you have today, and like you have in all these previous meetings.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to allude to, is that I can say whether or not you meet Treasury requirements in terms of an eligible activity, but no, I cannot tell you how your project benefits water quality or it might improve fisheries, or whether or not you're wasting your time with an application. I can tell you whether it, first and foremost, is an eligible activity, and then from there on, there's not much I can do.
Because you should have confidence in your own project you're proposing, that you say, yeah, this is going to help water quality, and I can get a letter from FSU Marine Lab that says this, or this is going to be a big project for what. I mean, you should have confidence that you can prove these points on the boxes you check.
And now this application format, is this being used in most of the counties, this format that you have?
Yeah, a number. So we use this format for Walton, modified it from Escambia, and then in Gulf County. And it's kind of evolved as Treasury's, the requirements have changed. So as new requirements have been made, as counties are submitting their applications, their multi-year implementation plans to Treasury, they're coming back with feedback saying, actually, we need to know this information. So we've kind of modified and probably added more stuff that we need, kind of like the measurements of success. The best available science is a new one. Those types of things have been added so that, again, it makes this whole process flow a little bit smoother and hopefully will be approved quicker.
And all of the selection criteria has been customized for this county based on the selection criteria that RAC.
Forgive me if I missed it, but did I see monitoring was one of the categories that has a score associated with it?
That's something that is a component of the actual, you have to provide that in the actual programmatic criteria.
All right.
Okay, and would monitoring be the equivalent also in terms of the evaluation process that would be utilized? Because one of the things that I was thinking about in terms as I'm looking at this, speaking from a university perspective in terms of when we go through our sponsored programs office in terms of the RFP, the request for proposal actually would be this document right here. If our university asks us, what are the criteria, what are the guidelines, what are we speaking to, what are the budget restrictions, things like that. And in terms of, say, within the budget, in terms of what the indirect cost would be in terms of what percentage would go back to the university, and if there are any limitations in terms of the dollar amount. Like I know some agencies say that they can only be 10% for indirect costs. And well, I'm recording, so I won't say what my preference is, but my preference is in terms of where we have guidelines that speak specifically to how much can be set aside in terms of that indirect cost. And when you say matching, you know, do we have a formula for the matching? Or just that we can speak to the fact that we can leverage dollars from other sources? And I ask a lot of questions in 30 seconds.
So what I think, so the leveraging is a bonus. So the more match you can show, and the more, so if you can show that at the end of the day you're asking for $30,000 from the county, and you can make that a $3 million project because you've got other matching sources, that's going to help you in the leveraging portion of it, but also in the actual budget breakdown, because Treasury has specified that. So as you go through your project, and depending on what activity it is, you have to say what activity is going to be directly funded from Treasury, from the direct component. So Treasury has said, so your project might have some other benefits associated with it that aren't in these 10 criteria, but they're saying you cannot apply direct component funds to that. That could be in the in-kind or other services, but Treasury will only directly fund activities that apply to these 10 things.
Just to clarify that, because I think I understand what you're saying. You have these categories. Let's say I have a $5 million project, and the project is to build this and do this and do that. And to do this and do that are directly applicable to those categories. But this other component is not, which would include my admin time, engineering, and things that may not be directly related to those categories. Then I'm going to have to find other funding for that other portion.
That can either be in-kind
or some sort of match or something like
Correct.
that from another state agency. or state agency and other grants, suitable
Any other
matches?
source, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
Any
it's,
source of money?
and that's, it says source of match. I mean, and that's, there are no restrictions. All Treasury is saying, we just want to know what the source is.
And that source has to be certified. I mean, if I'm applying for a grant, the state historical group, I mean, that's a speculative grant just like this is. I mean, how do can I say I applied for a grant?
That is something you can, and make note of that, say that it is not secured. It's applied for.
So then the other one probably asking the same thing, and I have to get all the stars on.
And just a point of clarification, I know you gave a hypothetical example when you said, so the engineering wouldn't be eligible. Just so you know, engineering could be eligible under this. Some things certainly are not. One of the things they've said clearly is not, is educational assistance, unless it's directly related to workforce development. But
Or it
engineering
has-
could be under planning assistance.
If it's an educational component that has a deliverable product. So like one of the things we're working with Walton County is the commission wants to approve this Grasses to Classes program where the students are growing seagrasses, but it's resulting in 2 acres of estuarine area being planted. So then I can say the direct component funds aren't for the actual classes component. I had to distinguish that, but I'm saying what the direct component funding for is the planting of 2 acres of estuarine habitat.
And I just wanted to make clear too, the administrative fee is 3%. Is that right?
For,
Administering the funds.
well, let's see here, this, I don't know. Yes, essentially there's a cap, well, I don't know, I don't want to even answer that question. Yes, admin costs are a problem for the treasury. They cap the county admin of our money at 3%. I'm not sure when it comes to programs.
And that's,
I don't know about that.
because that's your projects. So you're saying if the administrative fees are 20% of your project, I mean, that's a line item, that's an activity / item, and you would put that it's
Okay, I didn't know if
20%.
it was I have heard Mr. Pierce talk so many times about 3%.
Yeah, that's a problem that we have. I don't know that it applies, I just don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I can answer.
We can do that, however, a lot of institutions and funders will set the cap themselves and saying that you cannot charge over a certain amount for any administrative costs.
That's not,
In this one,
for your project, if your administrative fees are, if you're asking for $1 million and let's say administrative fees, I'm sorry, there is a cap on what you can apply from direct component funding, but you can trip that threshold and say that could be something that could be in kind. So it can be more than what direct component funds can be allocated for.
but typically, most people who apply for a grant, you really don't want indirect costs to be a lot from your institution or from your organization because it takes away from your direct service. So what I guess what Jamel was asking is that if the university were a partner with a entity here in the county, and usually they're gonna charge the max unless the actual funder sets the cap. And so what we were trying to, and when you spoke, I was just thinking, well, is the cap already set at 3%?
That's what Treasury has said can be spent from direct component funds for
Okay.
administrative costs.
All right,
Yes.
that's like,
I've got a couple of practical tips, having submitted some of these for other counties. There's that Word document that you can download. Basically, you can download this application in the Word document format. If you write your application in that, and then when you know you got it how you want it, then you can go in here and just copy and paste things in. That's very helpful because sometimes you might change the wording in one section, which will change what you wanted to say in another section. The other thing that's very helpful with doing it in Word is you can highlight all the text for a certain section and look in the lower left side of the screen, and it'll tell you the number of words that you just highlighted. So if there's a 500 word limit for a section and you're at 550, it's not going to work.
Or you'd have to submit it as an attachment.
And just on that note too, do your best to fit it within the word limits, because it's going to make it easier on the folks who are reviewing it, the RAC and the BCC. It's going to make it a lot easier on them, and it's more likely that the language that you work so hard on writing will get read all at once and consistently, rather than put down and like, oh well, I have to download that part later, or print that out, and pull up a different piece.
So, we're in the first round of this funding, so are there any examples that are part of the public domain that we could have access to of other applications?
I did a mock application. That's in the download section, and it's a sample completed application form. So if you were to go through that whole process and fill out everything, this is what would populate. And so it goes through section A. So what's the qualifying eligible activity, planning assistance, what are the secondary activities, those. And then I went through and did kind of a sample description of need, project timing, feasibility, project budget, those types of things. So that's on the portal website.
Cameron, since we're following a common sort of application for the 8 counties that are eligible to do this, and only counties that we talked about 3 of them, and most of the counties are ahead of us, just out of curiosity, like Gulf County, could they go to Gulf County's website and look at sample projects that have been submitted in Gulf County? Is that?
Yeah, if it's available online, I'm trying to think if those are, Escambia counties used to be online, although I was just on there looking for something yesterday, I don't know that it's.
Bay counties are still up.
In fact, Bay County, because Jim Moeller, he's their guy, and he's real
they've got
public oriented. So yeah, go to Bay County and type in restore and see what pops up on them, because they probably, that's a good idea. Because they're still going through the process we are.
Is there a schedule of events for what occurs after July 15th? Selection, a date for selection, scoring completion? Has that been established?
And that's, I think we had initially set the portal for 30 days, which isn't an issue.
Okay.
And what we kind of said when we talked to the commission was it'd be open for 30 days, and if applicants felt like they needed more time, we can extend this to 60 days.
Okay. Well, I sort of said 60 several times. So
Okay.
60.
And it's a very simple, I can extend that very easily. But yeah, once all the application cutoff date is, then we will receive all the applications and then provide those to the Restore Act Committee for them to begin their evaluation.
So they'll do an initial cut through. If somehow someone's not an eligible applicant or an activity, then the RAC won't even see that application. And so they'll do an initial through. What we're looking at is not having, I'll be honest, I'm looking at the Restore Committee members themselves, not having a meeting in August when everybody's got too many things going on, and so that they would do their review, that our application period ends July 15th, they do the review, and basically the first part of September then, RAC would get the completed applications that are all qualified, do their scoring. It shouldn't take that long, and then hopefully sometime in September or October, go to the county commission with a list.
Recommended,
Yes.
recommended product.
Bill.
There seems to be 2 ways for the RAC committee to score the applications. One is individually, and then they submit them back to you all in your average scores like you did with the criteria. The other is to sit down around the table and bring up topics up one at a time and let the committee have a consensus on the value. How are you gonna do it?
I presume to let everybody score individually, but that's the tack.
Because, some committee members might have more information than other committee members who influence the scores. One of the problems I had with the way that the scores were originally defined is there was no discussion. People in a blind closet put a number down there and you guys got the number and you averaged it and that was it. Without any discussion on the relative values of various items to Franklin County or to the municipalities of Franklin County. So it was kind of like drawing something at a raffle and see if you got it. Because I think the committee members were picked because of their expertise or their positions, and to not let them have a dialogue with each other over potential values of certain activities in the scoring process, I think really defeats the picking good people for the committee. Maybe you want to do both. Maybe you want to have each individual member score, then aggregate the scores and see what the average is, and then bring the scores back to the committee and let the committee reevaluate those scores. And if somebody feels that one criteria should be higher than another criteria,
I'm not opposed. That's really a RAC. I appreciate you bringing it up now, but that's really a RAC decision. So that's something we need to think about. Yes.
How has that been done in other counties?
Now, the counties, we've taken all of the committee members, have ranked them individually, and then we've averaged the scores.
But then the RACs have come together
And
and
had it-
discussed,
yes.
okay, here was your scoring, and then
And then they present it to the commission, but they still present it as, these were the top 5 ranked projects. However, we feel that this project is beneficial, so we think it might need to jump the list.
let me comment on Road Volusia County's process. They had a numerical scoring application, and all the applicants, I think there was 129, all the applicants had a numerical score. They divided it, those below 90,000 and below, and then those above. That provided 70% of the scoring. The other 30% of the scoring was provided in public presentations to the committee about the projects themselves. And so then the Franklin County Restore Advisory Committee then would rank a presentation and provide a score. And then those two were combined, the 70% numbers and the quantitative and the subjective. And it worked out really well. And there wasn't a single change when it went to the county commission.
Well, again, that's something for the RAC. We hadn't added that. We had not added the public presentation component. I'm not saying it couldn't be added in the scoring, but you know.
And I'd like to follow up on that. I think someone had mentioned scientific evidence, and one of the things is that when you're doing community-based work is to have constituents as integral participants with equal participation on committees as well as any decision making. Because in that way, you will, whatever you produce or whatever you fund, you will then know that it's going to be used by those who it is intended to impact. And so, you know, I don't know if that aspect has been addressed or not, but I would love it if you all would consider that. And I think that's a critical piece of ensuring that your indigenous residents that have long histories are intricately part of all decision making that is made.
Well, I mean, the indigenous residents being the county commissioners are integrally involved. They selected the RAC commission. I mean, so they selected people who've lived here a long time, and they have full faith in the members. If there's a component where there is public presentation, then sure, applicants can bring in sort of part of their clientele, part of the group that's going to be benefiting, and make a presentation. We haven't agreed to have public presentations, but that's a component. But the RAC committee's already been set. It's been in existence for 2 years now, so we're not changing who's going to be scoring these things.
Okay, so totally understand that piece of that, but the back piece of that is having become a resident, not a resident, but purchased land and invested in the community. As I interact and go around, I rarely see representation from socially disadvantaged, low wealth of any race at any of the events that take place within the county. So that tells someone from the outside that what is the mechanism to engage those residents in this process to ensure that their voice is heard. And I mean, I don't want to, but that's just a critical piece.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Forgive me, one more question. I've heard July
15.
14th or 15th, and I see June 14th.
Well, that's because I added a month, we didn't know that.
So it is.
Power.
Yeah, I mean, I told you.
How much in July, it's gonna be July.
It's in July.
Okay.
Well, since the portal opened yesterday, and you want to give 30 days, and we're just now having a workshop, you know, and
Well,
just,
and the intent with that was to give people a day if they wanted to look at it and try to, if they had questions as they went through the process, then that was why I wanted to have the workshop
did they
today.
even know the portal opened yesterday? Did all these people know that it
No.
opened?
I don't know.
Discussed at the meeting, and it's on the website.
So the applicants weren't aware, the RAC committee members, we told them, we didn't tell the applicants stuff. That's why it took 60 days. And again, there could be another workshop, although I believe probably not necessarily a workshop for everybody to sit at and answer questions, but these gentlemen are available. Let's sort of see how the process goes. I'm certainly available, county commission. And I told them that, you know, if because our applicants, and I'm not suggesting anybody is necessarily unschooled in the application process, they're having a hard time, or we're getting a lot of people saying, this is complicated, we need more time, we want to have a good application. You know, the only thing that's guiding our timeline is how fast we want to get the money back into the community from Treasury. And we can take longer, but it just takes longer than for Treasury to review, because there's 3 to 6 months of Treasury's activity on their end. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
At such time as the RAC committee finally looks and evaluates these projects, it would seem to make sense for them to have the authority to combine a couple projects that they see in their funding. Or look at an application and say, yeah, you know, this really qualifies, but they didn't really nail this particular point home. And if we're going to submit this up the chain, we might want to go in as a community and rewrite or help write or enhance applications to make them more feasibly funded in the federal evaluation of them. Is there going to be a time period for that kind of activity afterwards?
Well, I'll be honest, one of the we thought one of the byproducts of today was that people would hear about, they were very secretive about what they're applying for. But we thought that one of the byproducts of this afternoon would be, people would say, yeah, we're going to do a CO project over there at Carabel Beach. And someone says, oh, fine, we're going to do one over St. Louis Valley. Maybe we should combine forces.
Absolutely.
So I was waiting, that's a dialogue I thought might occur today, but there's really not that big of a group. So just my observation, there's not going to be much competition, commonalities of projects here. Now, if we find it when it's being submitted, yeah, we need to address that. Because this is the challenge, that some of us in this room may not really do a good enough job in the application, and they really ought to be with somebody else to get it funded.
And so on that note, Cam, when somebody logs in, or even if they don't log in, if they just hit projects,
Yes, and that's a good point.
will they see all of the projects that have been submitted, just their name, not the whole application, but they'll just see the name and a dot on the map? So if somebody has a project that says, CO project, and then somebody else is planning on doing a CO project, first of all, make sure you're not proposing the same thing, because that really makes things complicated if two people are proposing the same thing and one of them has a budget of $1 million, another one has a budget of $10 million, and they say they're going to do the same thing. Work together and try and team up. And that comes back to that leveraging and partnerships. You can actually improve your scores and your chance of winning by showing that different groups are working together.
And that's where so when you submit a project, it'll produce a dot on this map, and it'll also populate down to this table down here, and it'll be numbered, and it will have that that original description of your project, will have your title and description. So somebody can say, all right, somebody else is doing a CO project. Maybe I'll give them a call and see if it's something they want to collaborate on and submit a joint application. So you can go back in and delete your application and then say, all right, we've come together, we've got leveraging funds, we've got an active partner, and you can expand on your project. So yes, as projects are submitted, this will be visible.
And
Let me also remind myself, if not everybody else, that after these projects are submitted, after the committee ranks them, after the county commission approves them, after there's a 45-day public comment period, and then they're submitted to Treasury. And then Treasury may take 6 to 8 months to even 10 months to evaluate the multi-year plan, and then all applicants will have to file a Treasury application. So there's a second application.
That's correct.
And it's much more detailed than the original application
correct.
in terms of financial management and all of those things. So this is not an easy process.
Treasury did not want to be in this business. The Congress made Treasury be the administrator of this program. They don't like it, and they're making it difficult for all of us.
Well, and that's why they were very specific on eligible applicants, because they want to make sure you've got familiarity with federal dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
And with that being said, this really sounds like a pre-proposal in terms of where we are submitting an intent to submit, where it's a brief narrative, and then Treasury will in turn indicate if they want us to submit a full-blown proposal.
You can look at it that way. I mean, the application needs to be complete. Obviously, it's going to be scored on the basis. But the problem is we're trying to make it easier on those who don't make the grade, so you don't have to answer all the Treasury details, because it'll be much more in length, and it's out of our hands at that point. It's Treasury asking these questions.
So when you say multi-year, you're talking about the whole application that the county submits?
Yeah, it's called an MY, multi-year implementation plan, because the county could submit a plan for all $23 million, all 15 years worth of funding. Okay. The county commission is pleased they don't want to do that because we don't know about the future.
Right.
So really, I suspect there'll be, I say 4 phases of our plan, 3 or 4 phases, 4 years apiece, you know.
And so all of the applicants that are approved by the county fold into the county's plan?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's correct.
And the county approves the plan that is then submitted to Treasury for review.
Gotcha.
And the question is, and I know it's hasn't yet, I mean, since the county commission has said, we don't have, a perfect vision of the future, so in 5 years we're going to do this again, what happens to those projects that didn't score very well or didn't get funded in the first round? Are they automatically put in the next one? I can't answer that yet, but I mean, we don't want to have anybody's time wasted, but that's something that there may be a possibility that you didn't get the first time, or we're going to put you in the second time.
going back to the point of combining projects, not just combining them among different partners, but if, let's say, a community has a stormwater retrofit project, stormwater enhancement project here, and another one here, and another one here, and another one here, don't submit a separate project for each one. Lump them all together. That's for several reasons. One is, of course, this is a pretty extensive application process. The one that follows, the one, if it's included in the MYIP, to actually get the money, that's going to be even more detailed. And the cost, the level of effort that the county will have to go through to administer the contract and so on, it's so much easier to, well, put it this way, it's the same, essentially the same amount of effort to administer a $3,000 contract as a $3 million contract. So they don't want to have to do 100 different projects.
And Brenda, that's where the 3% came from.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we get that's the county's maximum administrative fee. And so the county, we have a choice. The county being a recipient, we can receive the money. We get all these great ideas, and then we can, I'll tell you right now, we could decide to be the recipients and also be the project managers. And even though the city of Carabel submitted a project for stormwater, the county could, in fact, decide to manage that stormwater project on your behalf, and we take the admin money, or we can turn around and make you a sub-recipient and let you manage it. And so, yeah, we have this cap of 3% on managing things, so we have to make this judgment, how complicated is this project, how confident is the other people doing it. So yeah, we're the recipients and you all, the applicants could end up being the sub-recipients, but if, the Yopon Garden Club really had this great project and we think, they're not really gonna be, so the county might end up managing that project, or we might try to convince the city to care about to do that. So not everybody necessarily is gonna be a sub-recipient.
Now that this is all coming together in terms of the multi-year piece, is there a possibility of looking at what the county's priorities are over the next 5-10 years, and then looking at what proposals or what people are interested in, and being more strategic about the entire process, which kind of saves everybody time, and you already get buy-in from people who are alike in terms of their different focus point, as well as from the county, which then doesn't create the sense of competing against the county.
Well, I think that's what Alan was talking about earlier with the Apalachicola Bay project, saying that that's a more regional, let's let the state do that, let's keep Franklin County dollars in Franklin County and focus on our local projects.
But there's still an environmental piece that the county's going to apply for in Part 1.
Right.
So that is where I'm saying, if we understood exactly what it is the county wants to do, their 2020 plan,
That's been done.
That's
called a
basically-
needs assessment.
so then, so why is it then that we cannot look at the applicants who want to apply?
Well, the needs assessment was the foundation for the evaluation of the scores.
But we don't know what that is.
It's available.
On the guidance document,
And it's,
and all the points.
Okay, the points, but does that say, and hey, I may be ignorant on this, does it say what the county wants, what the county has decided they want the county to look like in 20 years based on those points?
Well, it's not that detailed of a plan.
And that's what I'm talking about, because if I know your vision, then I know whether or not I even need to apply
well,
or not.
It's not really in one plan. There's actually many plans that focus on different things. There's a plan for the Apalachicola National Estuarine Research Reserve. There's a whole bunch of different economic development plans. There's all sorts of plans that some focus more on each different thing, and all of those were taken into account and essentially sifted through to develop a needs assessment that the county Restore Advisory Committee went through, and the county commissioners went through, added things. People just said, well, what about this? We think this should be added. We think this should be added. And folks, through that process over the last, 6 months or so, have developed that needs assessment, which is available on the website. And that needs assessment was then used to create the selection criteria that then was weighted based on the RAC members.
But there's not one narrative document that says, this is not a visioning exercise. This is an opportunity to make improvements that the community, that the consultants reviewing community public documents felt was expressed community needs. RAC committees sort of agreed with that. This is an opportunity then to fulfill those things by various players in the community.
Alan, the way I sold it out is that this process is not what's best for the county. It's what's best for the county that relates to the Restore Act
That's a good way of putting it.
that has already been passed by Congress. So there are a lot of things that aren't even going to be eligible that may be a lot better for the county than some of these other projects, but there's not a platform or an avenue to get there. And so the criteria for environmental protection, economic development, those things were in the Restore Act. And they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he made a very good point. This is not an open-ended for anything to be considered. It's got to be consistent with the Restore Act.
Got that. I was.
Thank you. We've been an hour and a half, and so I think people got a pretty good sense of the start. I would say, I mean, we've got to stay a little longer, but I think we've got a pretty good handle, I think you all do on the process. So the portal's open, it's all going to be online. I say have at it, and Cameron, so how do these people get a hold of you to ask any questions?
I'm on the Franklin County Restore website. My contact information is right there at the bottom.
I presume at some point this summer, I'll update the board by saying, or you all will come and say, yeah, there's 10 applications in the portal now, because I mean, this is, you know, the information is going to be there as people submit it.
Oh,
So,
yeah, as soon as you hit submit application, your
It's there.
project is available for everybody else to see.
so, you know, well, not the whole thing, but just the identifying.
Just the description.
The title.
Yeah, the title and description and the location.
Does that include who the applicant is?
I don't think it does.
Because
Because
if people are gonna try to
How do they
collaborate.
find it?
You'll have to call Cam and say, hey.
Yeah,
Oh,
project
okay.
title,
As long
date
as there's a way to
submitted.
find that out.
So, for
Yeah.
those of us who are interested in considering this opportunity, it would behoove us to create a title name that somehow describes who we are and what we're gonna do.
Throw
Put
it
it
out
on
there.
there tomorrow,
Right.
so that the rest of us can figure out who else is in this room and see if there's opportunities in the next 5 or 10 days to combine
Right.
those
Good
projects
point.
into one that's more competitive.
Doesn't hurt, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we have the opportunity to have another workshop if necessary, but let's let you all work on this and let's see how the process goes. So with that, I thank you all for being here, and we'll go get them.